to everyone, and good morning to those joining from Europe. Welcome to the third stop of BUS2BUS Digital Roadshow 2025, where the focus is on Southeast Asia. This live stream is a joint effort between the BUS2BUS team in Berlin and Massive Berlin Asia Pacific. My name is Intan, and together with me here in Singapore is my colleague Amira, and we are the Southeast Asia representative of BUS2BUS. Without further delay, I'll hand over the floor to Willow, our colleague in Berlin, who will be able to share in more details about the show and to further proceed with the discussion. Over to you, Willow.
Thanks, Intan, and welcome everybody to the third stop of our BUS2BUS International and Digital Roadshow in 2025. My name is Willow Beck-Jewett, and I'm a project manager at Messe Berlin in the Mobility Department. And I've been with the BUS2BUS trade show since it started in 2017. And it's been really great to watch this event grow and develop over the years. Now, before we start with our live discussion, I'd like to take just a few minutes to say a few words about BUS2BUS for those of you who are watching today who may not be familiar with our event in Berlin. So BUS2BUS is a trade show and business platform that really focuses on the future technologies and sustainable solutions in the bus industry. Now, next year, on 15th and 16th of April, we will be taking place for the 5th time, celebrating our 5th edition, and we really look forward to seeing you there. We bring together professionals from the public transport, from the private bus sector, from bus tourism and long distance transport. Now, on site in Berlin, you can expect expert panels and international speakers speaking about the very latest topics, whether that's the bus driver shortage, AI, alternative drives, on-demand and autonomous mobility. We'll also have a really wide range of buses there, whether that's electric or hydrogen buses or coaches, and even autonomous shuttles, and many of which can be tested in our live test drive area outdoors. The international supplier industry will also be there with their innovations and new products. For anyone that's watching today that would like to become an exhibitor for BUS2BUS 2026, please reach out to us soon as our early bird offer ends on the 30th of September of this year. And with that being said, I'd like to start the roadshow discussion for today. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our moderator for today. Her name is Ana Relema, and she's a principal at the Arthur D. Little in Philippines. And not only is she an experienced moderator for live events such as today, but she's also mainly a consultant and is focusing on sustainability, as well as the optimization, electrification, and digitalization of the future of mobility. So welcome, Ana, and thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Willow. Good morning and afternoon, everybody. Greetings from Southeast Asia. Thank you for having me here.
Great. Now, Ana, before we introduce our panelists, I'd really like to ask you a question. So what is your impression of the current state of mobility in Southeast Asia, and where do you see the most potential?
Well, thank you for that question, Willow. And I think this is actually a very interesting time to just provide a wide context of where we are in Southeast Asia, because it definitely is an exciting time for the bus industry right here in this region right now. We're seeing crazy momentum across the region, and I'm glad that we actually have this session to showcase all that is happening and discuss them in detail. So before we start and before I introduce our speakers for today, I'd like to provide 5 pointers just to give everybody an idea of what is happening on the ground. So first and foremost, fleets are going electric. We have cities like Jakarta, Bangkok, Singapore already placing big orders and retiring old diesel buses over the next 10 years. So secondly, we are seeing that bus-only lanes are actually working. So we have Jakarta's Transjakarta and we have Manila's EDSA busway already moving commuters as fast as many rail lines. These are costing far less and can be built rather quickly. So it's interesting to see what the potential could be for the rest of the region with this. Third, we have tickets going digital, finally. So we have QR codes, tap and go, bank cards are already making trips smoother and giving operators data to keep buses on time. Fourth, we are seeing new funding models that actually help. You have lease-to-own deals, tax breaks, and of course, carbon credit financing that can potentially be cutting costs and luring private investors into this space. Finally, of course, those are all opportunities and great developments, but finally, there are still challenges, naturally. You have limitations around charging sites, grid capacity, labor, as you aptly mentioned earlier. So there is still a lot that needs to be done, and various governments and stakeholders will really need to keep pace. So in summary, the region is moving, the region is revolutionizing, and this is all actually happening in a very, very fast pace. So if you're missing out, now is the time to actually try to consider this region. So I hope that quick snapshot actually gives us a quick lay of the land. And because for the rest of today's session, we will be having 4 experts that can give a lot more detail on the realities that is happening in Southeast Asia. So allow me to introduce one at a time our speakers. Firstly, let me introduce Yoga Adiwinarto, an Indonesian transportation professional with a mission to deliver and develop sustainable urban mobility around the world. He brings over 20 years of urban transport experience and currently serves as the Director for Business Development at Calista, a fleet-as-a-service company under Indica Energy Group with a mission to accelerate the implementation of the EV ecosystem in Indonesia. He's actively involved in organizations such as the Indonesian Transportation Society, as well as the Intelligent Transport System Indonesia, where he currently serves as Secretary General. Yoga, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Anna.
Next, we have Dr. Pradyut Dutt, who brings over 40 years of professional experience in transportation, both in Malaysia and internationally. He started his career in the Ministry of Works in Malaysia, then served in the Ministry of Transport, and then later in the Ministry of Finance. Very holistic, Dr. Dutt. Thank you for bringing that experience to the table today. He then served overseas with the Asian Development Bank in both Manila and in India. And since 2021, he is serving as the Group Chief Operating Officer of Prasarana Malaysia Berhad. Dr. Dutt, thank you for joining us here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Rini Lestari Putri. She is an accomplished infrastructure strategist specializing in sustainable and integrated urban transit systems. As the former head of infrastructure and facilities development at Transjakarta, she led transformative projects, including the CSW Transit Station, which is Indonesia's first integrated BRT MRT hub, and the revitalization of over 100 BRT stations. So for those of you that are not familiar with it, Transjakarta is Jakarta's leading bus rapid transit operator, playing a key role in reshaping the city's public transportation landscape. They focus mainly on multimodal integration, accessibility, and sustainability to improve mobility across the capital. Arini, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you.
Last but definitely not the least, we have Mr. Stephen Shikluna, who is the strategic transport leader and the managing director of Railpreneur, an Australian boutique transport advisory company that prides itself on providing unique technical, commercial, and economic advice to address gaps within the industry. Founded in 2017, the company has operated across Australia and most recently has commenced expanding into the very interesting region of Asia. Stephen himself is a passionate a transport leader, and his passion is about changing the landscape of the industry, keen to help redefine its current nature and ensure that it has a sustainable future. Stephen, would you like to say hello to the group here?
Good day, everyone, and thank you for attending this event.
Excellent. So now we have all our speakers introduced, and I think we're going to go ahead and start our questions and Q&A here, because there is a lot to unpack, as you all know. There is the digitization topic, there's the electrification topic, as well as all of the well-being, as well as the inclusivity and the many visions that we want to achieve in the region. But let's start with smart technologies first and foremost. So the goal of this first topic is really to explore as a baseline how and which technologies are really transforming operations across Southeast Asia. So Yogo, I think it's a good time to start with you with this topic, because what we know is that Calista plays a very crucial role in driving EV fleet adoption in Indonesia through the very unique business model that you are offering. In your view, how are IoT and data analytics shaping the efficiency and scalability of electric fleet management in the region?
Okay, thank you, Anna. Before that, I would like to just quickly introduce what Calista is to the audience, so then everyone knows. So we are pretty much sort of like a young company, only 3 years in operation, with the mission of providing the fleet as a service, focusing on the electric vehicle, commercial vehicle. So then our goal is to kind of like accelerate and also to break the barrier of financing. So all the high upfront payment for the EV, for example, like $100,000 US dollar, for the purchasing fee, can be sort of like lease, with us. But our service not only stops at that. So with the EV, we also see the big potential to utilize technology and also IoT. So then all of our fleets right now is also equipped with the IoT. The good thing is that it also helps because, for example, the famous sort of range anxiety that currently faced by drivers and also EV users are really something that we have to kind of like come over. So the idea of having the IoT is that we are able to kind of like not only tracking the vehicle, but also give them the a better and also optimized planning. So for example, one route that kind of like maybe taking maybe 80% of the battery consumption, we can sort of like tell them that actually this driver consumes more than the others, for example, because all the devices that we've put in the on the bus kind of like able to do it. Right now, it's a simple kind of like energy consumptions and tracking and so on. But we're also expanding to all the other sensors. So, for example, we also integrate to the security, all the CCTV camera. We are currently in the project to kind of like capture what how many passengers are actually in the inside the bus. And also the other thing is that on the origin destination from the ticketing, ticket sales, we also able to track where the passengers actually go from one bus to the other. So I think having this IoT, and especially with the EV, really match all of the operation to not only create better environment impact, but also better and also efficient move for the city itself.
Thanks, Yoga. So that's actually really interesting because we are using data to debunk a lot of the myths that come with EV. So that, as you mentioned, that includes range anxiety, because what better to use actually than actual data that can additionally make things better when it comes to future operations, right? So thank you for that. That's very interesting to learn, especially about Calista to start. Pradyut, let me quickly switch to you, because with your extensive background in transport strategy, and let us turn quickly to Malaysia in this sense. How do you see public operators in Malaysia adapting to digital transformation? What are the key policy or operational enablers that you're seeing that you would want to highlight specifically?
Well, firstly, let me just give a quick plug for Prasarana. Essentially, we are a company owned by the federal government, owned by the finance ministry. And what we do is that we run all the train services, urban rail services in Kuala Lumpur, except for the commuter rail that's run by another company. And we run about 3/4 of the buses in Kuala Lumpur, in the capital. When it comes to buses, essentially we carry about over 1 million passengers, over 1 million trips. So if you divide by 2, it'll be over 500,000 passengers a day. So coming to buses, when we look at how do we leverage on digitalization, actually our first focus is actually more on the passenger. We find that e-hailing has taken off greatly in Southeast Asia. And we felt that, while many people think that e-hailing is actually cannibalizing mass transit, we actually see that e-hailing actually has got advantages that the passenger values, but it comes at a cost to the passenger. So what we try to do is that we have introduced a service recently, which we call Rapid On Demand. Rapid is our brand name, you see, Rapid Bus, Rapid On Demand, ROD. These are small vans, 12 passenger capacity, 12 passengers, and we do it as feeder services. So what happens is that there is an app. You just as you are on the train, and when you're reaching the station, you book your Rapid On Demand service. So when it comes to 2 or 3 people which are going at roughly around the same area, what we do is that the van, as you reach the LRT station, the van will take you to your destination. And we find that that kind of predictability that is there, that is enabled by digitalization, and that is enabled by the great smartphone penetration throughout Southeast Asia, in Malaysia and throughout Southeast Asia, that actually works very well. We have had, currently we are running at about 72 stations, and we find that the ridership has increased 6 times compared to previously when we used to run feeder buses. So we find that when you provide a service which is in tune with what the public wants, using digitalization, because this you are using, it wouldn't have worked without the app. So people do respond. That's one aspect, passenger. How do you meet passenger demand? The second thing of how we meet passenger demand, which we use digitalization, is essentially we have entered into a collaboration with a company which maps mobile phone data. So we're using that kind of where people actually travel. Instead of estimating demand origin destination flows, instead of estimating them by traditional methods, we actually can see where they are going, from where to where, and we are actually revising. We haven't completed that exercise yet. We are revising the routes that we serve, so that we actually serve routes that people go to, from where they are to where they are. At the end of the day, that's what public transport is all about. We are supposed to satisfy public demand, you see. The other things Yoga has already touched on, we are not as advanced, I have to admit. We are not as advanced as Yoga's company, but we are going to, how do we improve predictive maintenance rather than just preventive and corrective maintenance by using data. We are just taking baby steps at this moment, and we hope to see results in about 6 months' time. As far as policy and operational enablers, they are not a major constraint, because policy is quite general. If as long as you satisfy passenger demand, there's no policy that inhibits you from doing that. So I think it's more on how you take the initiative rather than policy or operational factors being a hindrance.
Understood. So more and more, if I may just echo what you were just saying, Malaysia's operators are meeting their consumers where they are. So they're localizing and mirroring really what the habits are, rather than having the commuters adjust.
Yes.
It is the system that adjusts to allow greater ridership and ultimately achieve a lot more public transport use. That's very interesting to note those examples. And also good that the policy allows this and rather supports this, because I mean, if we just transpose this to the rest of the region, some may not be as open yet. However, we note that there is a lot of revolution that's also happening, so that public transport systems are also more adaptive and quicker to change with the new society. Thank you for that, Prajut. Irene, let me go back to Jakarta fairly quickly here. Um, what role do you think can software and IT innovations play in positioning buses as something that is more forward-thinking, eco-friendly, as well as a great alternative overall to other modes of travel? Because I think Transjakarta is really focusing on multimodality, right? So in Transjakarta, how are you integrating this to improve the future of bus transportation specifically?
Okay, thank you, Anna. So probably I will just tell you a bit about Transjakarta. So currently we are one of the biggest public transport operator in Jakarta and in Indonesia. We have 14 corridors now. We have more than 1.4 million passenger a day. So we serve a lot today, and then we are the longest BRT system in the world. Our transitioning to EV buses started in 2022, and we are targeting 10,000 bus in 2030. So currently we have, I think, almost 800 up to 1,000 EV buses compared to our diesel buses, which now has like, I think in total around 40,000 buses. So we have a lot of buses. And with this huge amount of capita that we had, Transjakarta is actually going towards digital in the last couple of years. The first one is the e-ticketing system. We started our e-ticketing system started in 2013, and in 2020, when the COVID hits the world, we are pushed to actually go to all cashless and no transaction, all cashless. So everything is in electronic ticketing system. It actually impact our operational efficiency because minimizing the human error, and then we can also get the ridership pattern basically from the e-ticketing system. We can optimize more route, and we can see and we can evaluate our routes more optimized, and we can also see how the travel pattern going every day. So we can actually see where to invest in our future infrastructure, let's say, which bus station that we need to probably make bigger, which depot that needs more improvement, let's say. And that's the first one. And also we are currently working on the account-based ticketing, because it's not only Transjakarta nowadays in Jakarta, right? We have MRT, we have also LRT, and we also have the electric rail, the KCI. The purpose of this account-based ticketing is to allocate subsidy for a specific passenger categories. Currently, we have 15 categories that got free rides from Transjakarta. And in the last couple of months, with the new government, we expanded our free rides for these 15 categories also to the MRT and LRT. So these 15 categories got the free rides basically to use the public transport. It includes the veterans, the elder people, the disabled people, and so on. In terms of infrastructure point of view, it actually gives us a richer data set basically to see that how this public transport and infrastructure should be going or towards where to go basically. It also identify our bottleneck, understanding the demand, and so on. So when we're talking about the multimodal transport planning, it actually gives us more data set for us to see where the transit should go, where the transfer should be, and where is the busiest point on the daily traffic. And we're also had from since October, I think we also launched our apps, which basically use the Google Maps, the data, the real-time data to track our buses. So nowadays, people is more comfortable and more confident in doing their trips with our buses. It actually saves more energy for them, saves more time because they know where their buses are at that moment. And then they can actually, okay, so I still have 5 minutes, let's say, oh, I can do this. And then I'll go straight to the bus station. And that's actually, it drives more passenger for us. And the use of that digital IT and this all this technology is actually upgrading our so to say brand in terms of, because you know that bus in Indonesia is always like bus is for the poor. That's what that's what people always say. But then with this all digital transformation, the digital transformation, it really lifts the Transjakarta into a certain level that, okay, this is very reliable and very comfortable and very, people are very confident nowadays to use our Transjakarta.
Thank you for that, Rini. Very interesting points because, and thank you for pointing out that COVID probably accelerated all of this. Because if we were to really summarize how these innovations are changing the way that the public sees buses, it's clear that we have been using this for data-driven investments, and it's actually these investments and their outcomes that the public sees. So the more this perception gets reinforced, the better the perception is among the public. People feel seen. People are less frustrated, and in the end, it's essentially just a good thing for the whole industry. Now, before I go to Stephen, let me just remind everybody who is tuning in to this show. We welcome questions. So if you do have a burning question that you would like to ask, you would like me to ask our panelists, please type them in because it's a very rare opportunity that we have this wide selection of experts in front of us ready to answer your questions. Okay, Stephen. So you work
Yes.
closely more and more actually with transport agencies in Asia, as noted in your introduction. So from your point of view, where do you see the biggest gap when it comes to digital innovation in Southeast Asian bus systems right now? So here we're hoping that you could give us an outside-in view into the industry, because we've seen that there's already a lot of work that's happening. And in your point of view, how can these be addressed strategically, actually?
Great questions there, Anna. So in terms of public transport or transport systems, time is of the essence, and time is precious. And with bus systems, it's no different. Buses are actually quite a unique transport mode in terms of their ability to address first mile, long mile, and last mile connectivity. And that needs to be factored into any innovations or any implementation of digital technologies in your strategy. So from my perspective, listening to Dr. Dutt and Yoga about what they're doing with IoT and passenger-facing systems, passenger-on-demand systems, they're great. And that type of flexibility is what we need. Well, from my perspective, coming from Australia, we actually need that type of technology in our systems. Running large buses where patronage is quite low is also not sustainable, and it just adds to the cost of public transport. And that brings me to a point. Cost of ownership is quite important, and that's where we actually need to look at the end-to-end of bus systems. So in terms of digital innovation gaps, A lot of gaps are probably in the asset management space. It's great to hear that in Dr. Dutt moving toward, with Prasarana moving towards more preventative maintenance systems. How do we go about getting that information so that we can make informed decisions so we don't have buses breaking down? Buses break down, that's time lost. And that's also a cost to the business in terms of revenue and reputation. So digital gaps exist in asset management in this sort of space. I think there are lots of opportunity to look at systems which not only address buses, but address the infrastructure in which buses run on. So how do we go about getting better asset management in relation to road condition or what have you? From a strategic addressing standpoint, it's horses for courses. I think we really need to focus on what type of technology and what type of solution we want to implement. Is it fit for purpose? Does it fit a value proposition? And is it going to be sustainably carried forward in a financial manner? Because at the end of the day, a bus system or any type of transport system is a business, and it needs to operate as one.
Understood. Thanks for that, Stephen. And I think it's really interesting because, okay, right now we're still just establishing a lot of the bus systems actually. So, but it will come naturally in my view that asset management becomes the next focus. But thank you for flagging that already, because it is, as we saw with our other panelists, it is already something that they are starting to look into as the industry matures moving forward. Now, you were mentioning about innovations and how this needs to be more, let's say, more and more we look at the adjacent segments, the end-to-end picture actually of systems. So it's not just the bus system itself, it's also those around it. And earlier we had one example already brought up from Purdue, where, okay, we're trying to bridge this with, let's say, on-demand services and so on, and leveraging a lot of the new technologies to actually try to bridge that through more creative ways. But so given your consultancy experience here, are you able to share maybe some more proven or emerging shared mobility or mobility as a service models that could perhaps be scaled in Southeast Asia and that could address some of the challenges that we are still experiencing in the region?
So from a mobility as a service, perspective, there are a number of mobility as a service providers. So we've got, Uber, which we have in Australia, or Grab or Gojek. They're services which provide a unique ability to order and be somewhere or obtain something that you've ordered, from point to point and in a most efficient manner, because obviously you don't have to pay couriers or pay large taxi fares and so on and so forth. It's much more cost effective. The only problem with mobility as a service at the moment is the lack of interoperability with other transport modes. And that interoperability and interfacing for connectivity is quite important to make systems, bus systems or vehicle mobility systems and shared services more effective. Connectivity and interoperability are going to be important factors in terms of how those systems scale up. And it should be a focus point going forward. The hard work is actually already done. There's already shared mobility systems and mobility as a service providers. We just need to have harmonisation and standardisation across those platforms such that they can speak to each other, and therefore passengers, like with Dr. Dutt's example of a passenger being able to see and order a bus on demand, it can actually be done across a number of different transport modes, and that's going to attract greater patronage, because the actual kicker in terms of growth and passenger growth is being able to attract discretionary users. And by attracting discretionary users, you build your next mature transport base. Those users will end up becoming permanent users of a public transport system. So the discretionary user market should be a key focus for any transport system going forward.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Great point on interoperability. And I think this is actually something that Southeast Asia especially needs to keep in mind, because right now a lot of development is happening, but it's happening from everywhere. Then naturally things will be bound to connect. And hopefully this then becomes the focus for various operators as well as the government moving forward. Since Stephen was actually highlighting the example of Rapid Bus in Prasarana again, I think it's time to go back to you and ask more about what next, right? Because if we're talking about, let's say, clearly MAS is already in some way incorporated for Rapid Bus, but there are those that are of course curious. What about autonomous buses or semi-autonomous buses? Are these something that that Malaysia is already seeing or exploring at this point in time? What about AI in this case, right? What policies or incentives do you think are going to be needed for us to support these more advanced innovations moving forward?
Yes, actually, we do have a issue on bus captain retention. It's much better now compared to previously, and so definitely autonomous buses or semi-autonomous buses are something that has to be considered seriously. In fact, this is it's not Prasarana, but there's another city in Malaysia which is currently in the midst of implementing what we call autonomous rapid transit, which is nothing, which is a term that first came up in China, about what is basically 4 articulated buses, basically 4-car buses, 3-car buses, or 4-car buses, which have their own dedicated right of way. So there's a city in Malaysia called Kuching, which is currently in the midst of building such a system. Now, we are something for these kind of systems to be developed and to be cost effective, because the issue is, why do you want to go to all that trouble to have a dedicated lane and to have a GOA 3 or grade of automation 3 or grade of automation 4 kind of systems? Why not go all the way to LRT systems, for instance? So there is something that but nevertheless we feel that there is a case where we can try with semi-autonomous buses. There are a few prerequisites that need to come. First is you must have bus lanes. That's first. And this is something that in Malaysia or in Kuala Lumpur, it is not that common. So it's a lot of interaction needed with the local authorities first to ensure bus lanes where we can get dedicated segments. The second thing is that, and this is here where policy is really very important. And currently we do not have a policy on how do you have an autonomous vehicle, who is responsible for an autonomous vehicle in case any unfortunate incidents happen. Will insurance companies, will they provide coverage for that? So those are issues that go beyond a mere transport operator like Prasarana, and those are places where actually we need government policy, we need the financial institutions, we need concerted effort that to make autonomous bus transit work, what else needs to change? On the infrastructure side, it is clear, and it is in a way hard as it is, but it is still the easier part to do. Bus lanes and synchronized traffic control, we know what to do about that. But when it comes to policies, in terms of responsibilities, in terms of regulation, in terms of financial coverage of insurance companies, those are the places where actually we need help. So it is something that definitely we are looking into, but I wouldn't say it's in the next 2 years. Maybe in the next 10 years or so, that's when I see the first fruits coming up. I may be pessimistic a bit on that.
Of course, but in any case, it's always better to be careful, especially as we want to build up that perception of the bus industry as something that is safe, something that is for everybody, and something that will really increase social, or rather improve social value moving forward. But noted on your point, Pradut, on a whole of industry approach, because the bus system is just a bus system. There's just so much that we can do. However, there are these supporting functions that, of course, need also to mobilize so that all of these advanced technologies can really come into play. Now, you mentioned something about infrastructure, and I'd like to take this opportunity to shift a bit to yoga, because one of the main infrastructure challenges that still exist really all over Southeast Asia are your lack of charging and maintenance infra. So, Yoga, if I might ask you, how do you currently view the state of charging and maintenance in Indonesian cities? What are the challenges in terms of availability, accessibility, costs? And from what you know, what is Indonesia's strategy actually to deal with potential supply chain issues related to charging infrastructure?
Yeah, so again, I mean, charging is such a critical component of the EV. I mean, both from the way that I see, charging, yes, it is currently picking up. So let me just give you an example that the EV penetration right now in Indonesia is about, at least last year, is about 5% of the total vehicle sales. And then this year, at least the first quarter of the 2025, it actually reaches about 11% of the total sort of vehicle sales. So I think EV is actually picking up, and we can also see that the infrastructure development in terms of the charging station, like the public charging station, is also growing. So we see now many CPO, the charging point operators, also filling in the gap. I mean, obviously the first charger, like currently the numbers roughly is about almost 4,000 charging locations in Indonesia. As you can probably understand, that mostly located in sort of Greater Jakarta and even Java Island. But it is also picking up, also other islands as well, like in Sumatra and also others. We at Kalista, we also dealing with the charging operators. So, for example, right now, our company also operates about 400 charging machines in about 200 locations across Java and Bali. So the idea is that for us, again, sometimes people kind of like chicken and egg problem kind of thing, but we see that the shift by the commercial vehicle, for example, Grab, and also Gojek and Bluebird, those three big taxi and also ride-hailing companies, they shift to EV quite big. I think, for example, Grab in Indonesia already deploy almost 3,000 fleet. Mostly in Greater Jakarta or Jabodetabek area, and that also push the charging utilization on the charging stations. So I think the goal, Indonesian government has mandated the PLN, which is the state-owned electric company, to push for more charging stations in all the locations. So the mandate, I think, started, I don't know, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. So the idea is that all the PLN regional offices across Indonesia, they have to put one a public charging station. Currently, it's not yet standardized. So, for example, in the big cities like Jakarta, Medan, Surabaya, they can put like 50 to 60 kilowatt kilowatt charger. But then in some sort of like a remote area, they have charger, but in even some location they still put like 7 kilowatt, which is very, very low. So I think, but it is actually picking up quite well as the EV penetration also goes up. So I think the market to put more charging infra is also increasing.
Thanks, Yoga. So it really is, I mean, it is a slow process and it has to be, but it's good to hear and learn that at least for Indonesia, although companies like Calista are taking it upon themselves to actually contribute to this, you have the big mobility players also participating by supporting with, of course, their fleets. And then you also have this contribution from the likes of PLN, which is the main electricity utility in that area, to actually also contribute. So again, it's a whole of industry approach that is being needed, and fortunately, hopefully, everything comes together quite well in the next few years. So hopefully, this is a challenge that gets overcome soon. Now, Irini, I think just to flip a bit on EVs here, we note that a huge part of this also is on battery technology, right? So charging infrastructure is one thing, but the advances in battery technology are also quite critical in making sure that this maintains a good service actually to the public. So in your view, what are the latest advances in battery tech that are actually helping to make electric buses more competitive in both urban and regional transport? In your opinion, are there actually additional measures that could help structurally weaker regions that do not have as good infrastructure as we have in Jakarta, for instance? Any thoughts on this?
Okay, thank you, Anna. So basically, I think it's very critical for us to advance the battery technology because it's actually when it comes to a battery density, safer battery technology, it actually will achieve our because Transjakarta has a significant coverage in area in Jakarta. So when it comes to more advanced battery technology, it increased the ability to achieve the required daily mileage without any disruptive operational in the middle of the operation. So to say that it's actually will increase our operational efficiency and infrastructure planning benefits. This comes from the when you had a more dense battery, you actually will increase the battery will become smaller and then will reduce the vehicle's weight, right? This will actually increase our passenger capacity first. And then also when we actually reduce the number of charging points because you have a more advanced battery, it optimizing the land use in Jakarta because you know that it's very hard to find charging points in Jakarta area. It's very premium, and that's why our depot or our charging points in Jakarta usually located in the outskirts of Jakarta instead of inside Jakarta area. So that's I think two big impacts that when we have a more advanced battery technology. Also, when it comes to additional measures, I think a robust charging infrastructure network really needs support from the government because, however, maybe by upgrading the grid capacity, let's say, or the strategic charging depot development, like maybe a government can also give like a scheme like PPP scheme. The government provide lands and then the the private provide the technology and the investment, and also the standardization of the battery and the charging also to actually sustain the long-term use of that system of the battery. I think that's probably pretty much what happened, and what can I, maybe have an input on that.
Thank you for that, Irene. And I think it's fair, right? Because especially if we were to bridge the big gap in Southeast Asia, which is really that region, rather the rural as well as urban, battery tech needs to improve to try to extend coverage further without burdening the rural areas, the farther areas with critical investments related to charging infrastructure. Now, Irene, I think let me just follow up earlier because we were starting to receive a lot of questions. So thank you everybody for those. But I'd just like to follow up on one of your earlier points, actually, on the on how buses are conceived so far in Jakarta, because you mentioned that there is still this perception around it. In your view, if we were to just go deeper into that, because it seems that the public is quite interested, what other misconceptions are there, maybe regarding sustainability, among others, and how can the industry realistically address these to improve public trust and adoption?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think for the last probably 10 to 20 years, the misconception of that the bus is for the poor is still there up to now. I mean, we cannot avoid that fact in Jakarta that who took the buses is like the second grade people, let's say, and those who cannot afford the private vehicles will take the buses. But then I think in the last 10 years, Transjakarta itself has transformed. We actually modernized. First is modernize our fleet back, I think, 10 years ago, and we modernize our fleet. We have modern and air conditioning buses, because previously the buses has no air conditioning, so it's very humid, hot, and it's very dirty. And also we implement a dedicated bus lane or bus corridor, which is very hard to implement. But it actually increased the bus speed, and it increased the reliability and predictability of the buses. So you can see now in Jakarta, like in Jalan Jenderal Sudirman, on the peak hours, you can see that the BRT, our bus is like very you can go up to like 40 kilometers per hour on the speed, while your private vehicles will stop. So that's the dedicated bus lane. And the third one, in the last 5 years, we actually did the revitalization of our bus station, which impacts a lot. It's actually increased our quality, high quality station. Basically, it impacts the number of passenger up to 10 to 20%. So people see that Transjakarta or buses nowadays is rather a very modernized system that is very reliable. And this is actually a collaborative works between the agency and the government, also from the Transjakarta. And then the the design itself for this bus station. Currently, we're using sustainable principles like more open, less air conditioning is more safety for women, because usually the user of Transjakarta is 60% is women. So when they feel more safe, they will use more public transport. And we also incorporate the universal design for disabled people, for elderly, and this actually increase the confident level of people using the public transport in Indonesia, and especially in Jakarta. And you can see that from 2019 up, and then we hit by COVID in 2020. And in 2025 now, we have increased our passenger up to 10 to 20%. So it really is a good symbol, let's say, for us that when we modernize the infrastructure, people or public will see that bus is not for the poor anymore. And I mean, if it's interesting because if you go with Transjakarta during lunch hour in in Corridor 1 in General Sudirman, people with branded shoes, with branded bags, is actually taking the bus. It really is very hard to see in the back 5 or 10 years ago. But now it's people like they are very confident to use the bus, and it really is a good thing for Jakarta, I think.
Thanks, Arini. And I'm glad to hear that the public is actually seeing this, because especially among the Gen Z, let's say, which is the future up and coming passengers, top of top of their mind is convenience. So when they're seeing that the buses are actually, the bus lanes moving faster, why am I not there, right? At the same time, they highlight and they focus on sustainability a lot more than other generations. And with buses being able to carry more and faster, this can only be good for the future of buses. So let me quickly switch to yoga, because yoga, from what we understand, Callista actually has offerings that are aligned with inclusive mobility goals to cater to diverse commuter needs. So this was already started by Arini just now, and how everything is really focusing on inclusiveness of services as well as accessibility. So in your opinion, what key factors, such as, for example, sustainability, zero emissions, passenger comfort, will redefine bus travel in Indonesia moving forward? What do you think are customers expecting?
Okay, well, I mean, to be honest, the real passenger or customers, they don't actually care about, whether it's EV or, autonomous or anything. They just want the bus, to be fast. They want the bus to be on time. But again, I mean, we have to also look into a bigger. I mean, when we deal with the bus project, not only we focusing on the passengers, but we're also focusing on how we get traction from the government. So, for example, the EV is actually now, because it's kind of like, a big trend in the bus industry in Indonesia. They also see this as, for example, the government point of view. They see this as a way to sort of lowering the fuel subsidy, for the diesel fuel, for example. So, you kind of like shift, the subsidy, but also on the other hand, get the sort of environmental impact and also better air quality. So I think these things actually matters for the more on the politician rather than the actual passengers, because as I said, that passengers, they don't really care about whether the bus is actually environmental friendly or not. But I think the idea is that yes, inclusiveness is also part of our strategy as part of the planning. So Callista, when we focus on the project, we actually started from the planning side. We are the one who also push for the government, for our clients, to ensure that obviously EV is one thing, but also sort of like inclusive. So having an inclusive access, and also the space for wheelchairs. Even for the woman passenger, we provide more suggestion on how we can sort of make better safety for CCTVs and so on and so forth. So I think this is something that we want to ensure that the promotion towards bus is also big. Not only that the bus is quick and also safe, but also it can provide comfort. You can also get more, becoming a sort of like environmental hero, if you take the bus, and especially if the bus is EV. So I think this narrative is really selling quite well for the city government, but also for the passengers. So, for example, right now outside in Jakarta, so in Indonesia alone, like we have also cities like Medan, Yogyakarta, Surabaya. They started to transforming into EV buses. And again, I mean, we are also seeing any kind of like secondary cities, like cities with more more or less like 1 to 2 million population. They also start pushing the bus into EV, because the traction on the buses are not really that big. But then when they said EV, that's kind of like a new thing for them. So I think the idea is that with the fleet as a service, we provide the one-stop solution for the government, from the planning side all the way to the commercial. So then all the charging infra, all the buses, and all the headache, sort of like a preparing the EV project, will be handled by Calista, and they just are focusing on getting the the subsidy, but also getting the passengers to be ready on board on the bus.
Thanks, Yoga. That's actually very interesting, and I appreciate you being so pragmatic about the early parts of your answers, because at the end of the day, passengers really, I mean, they're looking for mobility. They're looking for options. So for as long as this option actually is effective in getting them to move from one point to another, that is really what will sustain the bus system moving forward. Okay, the novelty, new tech may be something that can get people to try. However, it is ultimately the performance, the punctuality, the level of comfort, as well as the sustainability of a lot of these buses that can really keep those passengers in the system for long. So this is how we create habits moving forward, especially towards the new generation that is a lot more open and less stuck in that preconception that we have had for the last 2 decades. Thank you for that, Yoga. Purdue, let me quickly swing back to you on focusing on passengers, actually, because in a lot of your answers and insight earlier in this session, it's clear that passenger-centric service design is more and more an essential in the DNA of operators, not just in Malaysia, but actually region-wide and maybe even globally, right? So from your point of view, what lessons has RapidBus learned about enhancing real-time communication and customer engagement? I mean, at which point do you actually, when does this happen so that you can actually transform and create all of these solutions that are closer and more centered on the passengers?
Yeah, actually, that's actually very key. And this is something that has been lacking all this while, you see, because when I hear Arini speak about how buses are perceived in Jakarta, I thought for a moment that she was speaking about Kuala Lumpur, you see. So because it's exactly the same perception that we have here in Kuala Lumpur. And when there's something, let me just digress a bit. There's something that is we found very strange happening after we recovered from COVID. Now, during COVID, both our rail services and our bus services, both the passenger ridership went down. But rail services by 2023 had surpassed their pre-COVID ridership statistics. But bus remains stuck at about 60% of their pre-COVID. Now, and that is something that we found a bit difficult to understand, and we were wondering, why don't people come back to the bus? Is it? Surely they didn't all die of COVID, no? I mean, so we wonder, why is it? And we realized something, that no, as time went on and during COVID, the communications on COVID were very well done. And people have come to expect that same level of communication, that same level of information flow for every other service that they use, whether it's public transport, whether it's some other service, they expect that. And for trains, it was there because, the passenger information display systems, all those things are there. Whereas for bus, it's not there. And this is something peculiar maybe to Malaysia or to Kuala Lumpur. The bus stands are not we do not control the bus stands. The bus stands are the responsibility of the local authorities. So when we want to put up displays in the passenger information displays, screens, to give real-time information, the issue arises, who will maintain, why, it's not my asset. Why should I maintain it? No, those kind of, who will pay for the electricity? Very, very mundane issues, but they were affecting how we communicate with passengers. So what we decided is that, okay, we have to come up with low-cost solutions, but low cost doesn't mean that the information is degraded. So we have got QR codes in each bus stand for each bus number. As long as the passenger scans the QR codes, he or she would be able to find the information on the bus, how long it'll take, and those kind of things. So those is one part. The second thing is that engagement with the passenger, currently we cannot identify the passenger because, we have a single ticketing system, but that ticketing system is, the information on that ticketing system, the passenger information, personal data is actually belongs to the company, and under the National Data Protection Act, we cannot really access that information without the consent of the user. So what we have to do is that, again, the point that I think Arini made or Yoga made, we need to be able to identify who our passengers are. And so for that, we actually have got to enhance our ticketing systems so that, we can capture the information and we can engage more with the passengers. That part is something that we are lacking, and I am actually looking for answers from the others, rather than me trying to say something that we have not very good experience with.
Yeah, thank you for that, Pradyut. And I'm sure there are listeners right now that might have the answers for you. So for those of you who might have the answer, please feel free to reach out to Pradyut afterwards, just to support actually the development of the bus industry in Malaysia as well. So we are coming towards the end, but before that, and before I ask all the speakers, Stephen, I'd like to bring you in for one final question before we open the floor for final statements and so on. You as an outside, you with the outside-in view of the region, how do you think can Southeast Asia, especially the cities for now, because again, the rural areas have their own challenges, how can the cities balance rapid urbanization, which we see everywhere, whether it's Jakarta, Bangkok, KL, and Manila, with sustainable, user-friendly bus design and bus designs and systems innovation? Actually, how can this realistically be balanced? Is it merely a trial and error exercise moving forward?
I think the real issue it's not just isolated to bus systems or urban systems. It's a transport issue from the outset. You have to actually bring a lot of elements together in order to make the transport system work, whether it be rail or whether it be bus or another mode of transport. You've got to bring the rolling stock or the vehicle, you've got to bring the infrastructure, you've got to bring the operations, and you've got to bring the systems together, and they need to work harmoniously to operate as one and then become a sustainable practice going forward. It's great to hear that there's lots of things going on in the Southeast Asian market, with exploration of on demand and fleet as a service and anything as a service, because as a service is gone beyond the software as a service mindset. It's become everything. Even servitization and in asset management is another example of maintenance as a service. But when we come to things like bus design or infrastructure design, we need to sort of think about what do we really want to achieve. We need to make it customer centric. That's important. First and foremost, if we don't capture the hearts and minds of the customer and actually move them towards that form of public transport, whether it be bus or whether it be rail or what have you, but in this context, we're talking about bus systems, we need to actually capture what they really want, what do they really need, and what type of information do they require to make a decision. Because at the end of the day, it's all about their decision. And we need to focus our efforts in terms of what innovations or what type of systems or what type of interfaces, whether they be contactless or whether they be tangible systems, how do we make them customer centric?
Thanks, Stephen.
We need to. Sorry, and we need to, and one of the aspects that I think we need to focus on, and it's I guess a mantra that I try to push when I meet with various parties and whatnot, is actually looking in your neighbour's backyard, your industrial neighbour's backyard in this case, because there are other systems out there that have implemented information capturing systems and whatnot. I mean, I'm a big coffee drinker, so of course I've got an espresso machine at home. If I walk into a shopping mall, because I have an Nespresso app, it automatically sends me information. Go to Nespresso, you need pods, right? But that's not breaching any privacy requirements or what have you. But how do we turn ticketing systems into something like that? How do we get information to customers in a more direct way that makes them more comfortable, more sort of included in terms of their passenger experience?
Thanks, Stephen. So that really is an interesting point, because the public transport industry, although it is up and coming right now, it is not existing in isolation. So it's not existing as a vacuum. We have adjacent, or rather not necessarily adjacent, we have other sectors that have innovations that can potentially be leveraged. So it's a matter of collaborating and identifying those innovations, collaborating with them, and seeing if this is actually something that could work amid the challenges that the region is facing. So I think let me quickly just go through some of the questions that we are also still getting from our viewers. And this is a good time to switch to one specific question, which is really on moving forward from a policy and planning standpoint. And I think this might be best suited for you, if I may. What does Southeast Asia need to prioritize over the next 5 years to stay competitive in smart urban mobility?
I think the one that Southeast Asia actually should consider is actually, we have done a lot on how to make public transport attractive. But at the same time, we always lack on how to make private transport less attractive. That part is something that's is always forgotten. Like when you go to certain cities elsewhere, you'll find that parking spaces are restricted. Like an apartment in the city center cannot provide one parking place for every apartment unit in the unit. But yet here you have not just one, you have two. How do you increase parking charges? All those, I don't mean just congestion pricing, I mean just initial measures to discourage private transport is something that our cities have shied away from. They have always concentrated on, make public transport more attractive. But there's a certain amount that you can make public transport more attractive without actually having some sort of disincentive for private transport. Bear in mind that the competitor for public transport operators in Malaysia, at least, is not just the car owner. It's also actually the motorbike owner. 40% of our vehicle fleet is actually motorbike. And they are the ones which actually, for convenience sake, when I was a student, I was also using a motorbike. So for convenience sake, you can't really beat that in public transport. But that is something that that's a challenge, because we cannot go on sustaining our sustainable urban city if we do not actually improve the modal share of public transport.
Okay, understood. That's fair, because it has to be a system-wide approach in a sense, and we cannot just keep promoting public transport as well as private transport, because it in the end we have to go towards something, or rather the option that benefits society the most, and that is best for the environment as well as the communities around as well. So I think, Yoga, let me quickly direct to you one of the questions that we're receiving from the public, specifically in managing just, or rather balancing many more buses as well as sustainability. So in your view, because according to the public, running more buses naturally helps reduce waiting time. Sure, so that's good. The passenger is happy. But how do we actually balance that with sustainability goals, especially in relation to emissions and energy use? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So in the bus sector, we kind of like have a saying that frequency matters. So I mean that's actually one of the things that we should really take into consideration. We have seen in many parts of not only in Asia but like in some part of the world, like for example even in some part of Europe, like we have bus every like maybe 35 minutes, 40 minutes, even like 1 hour. So I think in a buzzing city like in Asia, where population typically counted for more like 10 million passengers, so 10 million people, like and low bus punctuality, but also the frequency really matters. And it's happening. I think in the past, I think Radu mentioned about the introduction of the bus rapid transit, and you also mentioned about that. And so the trend in bus rapid transit is happening, well, has been happening in Asia, in Southeast Asia. In Asia also, like in China, for example, in the last sort of 15 years, it is really rapid, growing in that. So I cannot emphasize enough that how important having good bus lane, good like bus rapid transit corridors to improve those efficiency. So we can have more frequency with less bus with the BRT. I mean that's actually one of the example that we can show in many cities where we have the BRT. So I think having those frequency really matters, but to kind of like make sure that the energy consumption, for example, and also the emission, that is why where the EV kind of like play at on that one. So where you can have better frequency, but also without jeopardizing your operational costs, for example. Because for example, right now in Jakarta alone, um, our energy costs, and mind you, this is actually compared to the subsidized diesel. So our energy costs, after we shift into the EV, we have lowered around 75% of the cost. So from the subsidized fuel, which is only I think 50 cents per liter, we have actually reduced the cost of operation of energy by 75%, and that's only one of the aspects. And also in terms of the emission, because of our electricity is still dirty, with the coal and everything, the figure I think is about like 30% less emission if we use the EV bus, not because of the air pollution, but because of the source of the electricity itself. I think for the air pollution, yes, it actually have loss. So I think the point I'm trying to make, yes, frequency is what you should really focusing on. That can also goes hand in hand with the punctuality, but having good infrastructure like the bus rapid transit in Southeast Asia, that really matters, and that should be the way towards the future, complemented by the EV shifting technology on the buses.
Thank you, Yoga. Coming from Manila, I completely support this very exciting development of bus-only lanes, because it might be weird for some of our viewers from other regions to be hearing that this is only being explored recently in Southeast Asia, but it is reality actually, and it is something that is impressively working, and it is something that more and more I think we will see in Asian cities, simply because of how it can support that balance actually of frequency, and rather support more of manage both frequency and sustainability by making sure that all of these are sustained without sacrificing customer service and passenger value at that. So I think we are in the final minutes of our panel. So maybe if I might ask every speaker here for your vision for 2030 when it comes to the bus industry in Southeast Asia. Could I get maybe Arini to start?
Okay, so I think, thank you, Anna, for the 2030. I think, first of all, for me, is the electrification of the public transport, particularly on the buses. I think it will be the backbone of the urban mobility in Jakarta. We can reduce the GHG and stuff, reducing also the operational cost. And the second one is the seamless, integrated, and smart urban mobility. I think it's very important nowadays because talking about the public transport, we are not only talking about the buses, but also other modes. For Jakarta, let's say we have MRT, we have LRT, we have also other rail-based transport. So the integration between the multimodal transport is very important with digital transformation. I think it's something that we cannot avoid. It's something that we need to really lift up the digital transformation, and also the smart infrastructure, like let's say the smart management system and intelligent public transport infrastructure. I think those two I think is the focus of the 2030, and also an active transport, like walking, cycling, so the first mile and last mile. I think that's also very important when we're talking about the public transport. Yeah. Thank
you,
you.
Arini. Stephen, do you want to go next?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. But for 2030, I think there needs to be a greater focus on the interoperability, as I mentioned before, of systems. It's quite important. I think from a technology perspective, we've got a lot of smart stuff that's been done. We've got some great apps and mobility as a service examples. From a technology perspective, Internet of Things, use of Bluetooth low energy devices and other forms of information capturing are there. We just need to figure out how we can actually get all the information we need to make informed decisions. And as I mentioned before, interoperability across those modes of transport and information systems is key for intermodal connectivity, which should be front of mind in any system.
Thank you, Stephen. Yoga, over to you.
Yeah, I guess 2030, I really encourage all the cities should adopt this 15 minutes city concept. So then all the stuff that we talk about, can really, be helpful because of whatever you want to go. That's kind of like 15 minutes sort of walking, or even like using public transport sort of reachable. So I think having more sort of dense compact cities are really the goal for us to create more sustainable and equitable mobility in the city.
Thank you, Yoga. And of course, last but definitely not the least, Pradyut.
Okay, essentially my vision is that in 2030, bus is no longer seen as a second-class mode of transport. So essentially, that's my vision. But I do also have some worries, like we are electrifying all our fleets. We are electrifying them. And then, but as you know, as time goes by, the range of an electric bus becomes less and less. And how do you ensure that you can keep on servicing your routes without, when we have electrified all our buses, how do we ensure we can keep on servicing our routes at the same level of service when our range is becoming less and less? So another vision of mine, a hope of mine, is that there are really great advances in battery technology, so that we can offer the public a service as good as what they can get with diesel buses. Because as Yoga said, public doesn't care whether it's electric or diesel. They just want service, good service. So we can and for that we need technology advances. So one is public perception, and two is advances in technology. I think these are the two things that we need.
Thank you, Prajut. I think we all share your vision, and we all acknowledge as well the challenges, because noting that there are also additional challenges around labor and all of the infrastructural requirements that we are facing here. It's good to hear that at least the vision is quite positive from everyone. It's good for us to be ambitious, because this is just saying that the region will continue to move, the region will continue to adapt, will continue to revolutionize for a better bus environment for all Southeast Asians. I think it has been a very interesting chat. Thank you, dear panelists, for tuning in. Thank you to the public for actually sending very good questions. There may be follow-ups, but for that, I think we have the Bus2Bus show, or rather actual summit happening next year to address all of those concerns. But for now, my name is Anna. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to give you back to Intan for us to close this session.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again to all our speakers, as well as our moderator, for the valuable insights, and to everyone who have joined us today for this live stream. We hope the discussions have actually sparked ideas, inspired new perspectives, and opened up possibilities for collaboration, maybe across the region and beyond. So we will leave you with the video of Bus2Bus event, and we hope to see you at the event next year. Thank you so much.